Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the What Was That podcast. I'm Jazzy.
And I'm Addi.
As we've talked about before on the show, both Addi and I get some pretty gnarly nightmares.
Yeah, Jasmine gets churches, and I get murder hotels.
Yeah, fun.
Yeah.
I do wonder what that says about our psyche.
I don't know, and I don't really think I want to find out.
Fair. But what do you say if we pick about other people's psyches?
I'm literally running on 3 hours of sleep right now on top of multiple nightmares, so who am I to talk? But sure, let's do it. I actually have a little surprise story in my back pocket from one of our friends.
Fun. And you did say that Sarah listens to us as she falls asleep, right?
Yeah, dream a little dream of me or whatever they say.
Whatever it is. Story 1. About 10 years ago, I had a dream that still gives me chills every single time I think about it. Important backstory information. A friend of mine passed away when he was 19 from a sudden illness. His name was Kevin. A few years after he passed, my boyfriend and I moved in with a friend who was Kevin's best friend. We shared a one-bedroom apartment and had both beds in the same room. Rent is expensive in your early 20s, okay? One night, I was sleeping and dreaming. I can't remember the beginning of it, but my dream suddenly changed. It got really bright, and as I was walking up a set of stairs leading to an apartment door, I opened the door and there was Kevin, sitting on the couch in the living room of this brightly lit apartment. I said hi to him and sat down on the other couch facing him. He said hi, smiling back. I started asking how he was and that we all miss him. He said he was great and he missed us too, and that he's keeping an eye on us from wherever he is. Anytime I asked about where he was, he would say he couldn't talk about it or he would have to leave. I said we don't have to talk about it. He said we shouldn't be sad about this sudden passing and continue to live our lives and be happy, love one another, and things like that. After a few minutes, I suddenly woke up. It was the middle of the night. I looked around my room. My boyfriend was snoring and my roommate was asleep in his bed. I tried to go back to sleep, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Kevin was somehow in the room still, as if something was watching me. The dream just felt way too real. While looking around the room, I said, "Kevin," out loud and almost a whisper. My roommate's head lifted off the pillow suddenly, and he turned around to face me. He said, "Did you just say Kevin?" I responded with something like, "Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I just had a strange dream about him." He froze and then said, "I just had a dream about him too." Then I asked him what happened in his dream. We had the same dream at the exact same time. That's weird.
That's crazy, actually.
Okay,
that
so
kind of has me gagged a little bit. George.
Okay, but my dad had a dream when maybe a few months after my grandpa passed away, and my grandpa was like trying to come and tell him, he's like, "Oh, I'm okay, I'm good and everything," and my dad's standing on the other side of the room. He's like, "Okay, cool," and my grandpa's like, "Let me give you a kiss," and he's like, "No, kiss of death, kiss of death." And I'm pretty sure his older sister had a very similar dream. I don't think it was the same night.
Yeah.
But it was around the same time.
Yeah.
So,
interesting.
Yeah.
I imagine it like, obviously, hopefully it's not this malicious, but insidious, like the dream world, and everyone there is dead and evil, and it opens up the portal every time you go to sleep kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Obviously, this is not the same because this is a friend coming to tell his other friends that he's okay, which is very sweet.
Very sweet.
I have never had that experience happen to me, so I can't say anything. That would be so bizarre. That would make me feel a little crazy if I woke up in the middle of the night and at the same exact time your roommate had the same dream.
Very strange, yeah. I don't see any other comments from OP in here, but a lot of people saying, "That's wild, that's really beautiful, super touching," things like that.
The way you said that.
Yeah.
Super touching. Whatever, touching, beautiful, whatever, meaningful. Cool. Next story.
That's wonderful. I think it really was Kevin that night.
I mean, I would assume that is actually Kevin.
Right.
I think it's kind of funny that he used the same exact dream, though. I wonder if it's like a simulation thing on the outside. We're on the other side, the outside. Innies and outies. Sorry, guys, severance. Yeah. But on the other side, if it's everything's okay. This is weird. I follow my train. Okay.
Okay.
So we're all simulation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you get to the end of your simulation in which it's death, but which is also a simulation.
Yeah.
So you get to the other side. It's like making your one phone call at jail, like while you're in jail. So you get to say goodbye to whoever you pick, like a certain amount, and you get to pick how you do it.
Mm-hmm.
But he was like, I can't like waste one of my phone calls.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do the same thing at the same time.
They're right next to each other.
He's like, set up the simulation just like this. Just program me sitting next to the other person.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
Can we count that as one?
It's not a long distance call. It's coming from in the house.
It's coming from inside the house.
Yeah.
The call is coming from inside the house. Well, that is very touching. It is very sweet.
Yeah. That's really nice. I'm like trying to read at the same time. Like other people saying that they've had similar things happen. And they also had dreams where the person visited them and comforted them. So, yeah, it sounds real.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with your psyche
No.
with that.
Pretty psyched for you.
Story 2. When I was 6, I allowed a person to live in my head, and she's still there. When I was around 3 years old, a strange rule got into effect in my dreams. I was no longer allowed to touch a ceiling. The penalty for doing so was an immediate and terrible nightmare. I often had a normal dream about being in a normal room, but I would suddenly start to float up. I'd hang onto the doorknobs or furniture for dear life to prevent myself from touching the ceiling. But the pull would almost always be too strong. And just like that, a normal dream would turn into a dark hell of death, torture, and horror. It worsened and eventually happened almost every night. At the age of 6, I dreamed I was playing with my friends in the living room and was really enjoying myself. Then I started to float. This time, I wasn't scared, but just really pissed off at the rule for ruining my dream again. I thought, all right, bring it on then, and actually jumped towards the ceiling. This time, however, I broke through it. It didn't trigger a nightmare, but I ended up in some sort of temple hall lit by moonlight sky only. It was completely empty, except for a girl my age, with black hair standing in the middle. She was really startled by my suddenly being there. I confronted her, asking if she's the one giving me the nightmares. She nodded, and I immediately got angry, shouted at her, and told her I ought to slap her for ruining so many of my nights. Demanded her to get the fuck out forever. I calmed down and I noticed she began to sob. Oh. She explained that she's someone who began to exist without having been born. Is this propaganda?
That is how that sentence read, I would say. Let's continue and see if it is.
And how that's an ultimate kind of misery that can never be fathomed, and by people who had the privilege to be alive in order to exist.
Huh?
The existence of people like me is always bound to life. The only way for someone like her to ever experience a living existence is by hijacking a person's mind like a parasite, causing nightmares. She felt bad about the pain that causes, but at the same time couldn't bear the continuous misery of existing without life. I felt bad and had the feeling that her forcing her way in my mind is what caused the nightmares. So I gave her a hug and offered her willingly to live in my head and experience life through me. My childlike reasoning was like, why not just ask? She seemed extremely grateful and my dream ended. The nightmares were gone since. I had the occasional bad dream, like anyone, but not nearly as frequently anymore, and the ceiling rule was no longer in effect. I'm in my late 30s now. What's weird is that once every few years, I dream about visiting that same hall with that girl I allowed to live in my head. And she's even aged with me, so she's been a woman for quite a while now. We just talked about stuff, or my life, she piggybacks on. I remember going there once when I was depressed, and she assured me that she'd rather have the experience of a depressed life than existing without life altogether. She asked me to think of the loneliness of growing up in the world alone, then dial it up a notch and imagine not having even been conceived by two living beings, but being nothing more than the idea from nothing.
What?
I'm too down to earth to think about this on a supernatural level, but nonetheless, can't help but occasionally feeling a little paranoid about it, or this brief fleeting thought during an embarrassing moment of, oh man, what would she think? And then we have a couple of edits.
Let's go.
Okay, first edit. It's been awesome to read through the replies and discover all kinds of theories and perspectives, both psychologically and spiritually, that seem to fit this phenomenon. I've never thought of it as something other than a mythically flavored dream that copes with some existential stuff I worked or still work through. As I stated, I've always leaned heavily towards cold, hard logic. Grew up in a devout Catholic family, but lost my faith around the age of 7 because I felt like it didn't make enough sense to me. I can work with psychology, though, which often enough can coexist just fine with spirituality. It's not a healthy sign for a child to have that many nightmares, and also not exactly normal to dream up such a sad, deeply existential entity. I can't really see the girl as a demon or manipulative, energetic parasite. The nightmares and the way they vanished reminded me of the movie Jacob's Ladder, where fear or acceptance of death decides whether you'll see demons tearing your life away or angels freeing you from your burdens. But I was a pretty lonely kid with 2 toxic, violent, and heavily negligent parents, basically children themselves, flipping out if I cried or showed the slightest sign of discontent. Always walking on eggshells at home, my presence was, at best, in the way. Acting out at school in an attempt to catch up with the attention I missed out on quickly marked me the difficult kid. I quickly learned to be as invisible as possible. IFS is mentioned in a number of replies, and I think that's really applicable here, similar to the schema theory. A child who is forbidden to feel is taught to not be alive either. For example, despite a long history of successful therapy, seeing 85 as the number of replies to this thread has been a major source of anxiety for me today because it conflicts with those must be invisible or stop whining rules that are burned into me. A dream where you stop being afraid of the inner child that wasn't allowed to a living existence and then to offer her life seems core self-induced schema therapy in that regard. Enter the spiritual approaches shared in this thread and still works. I mean, on one hand you have a life in need to be wanted, and on the other hand an entity who wants to live. No wonder the two would attract one another. Yup. At first I was going to say OCD. I was like, the fear of doing something with these kind of intense repercussions if you do them. Something so silly as like touching the ceiling. Because I used to do the same thing. One of the things that I did when I was a kid, which we've talked about, is the grudge. The grudge has traumatized me.
Yeah.
But I always thought that if I ducked my head underwater when I was taking a bath as a kid, and my ears, like my ear holes where I could hear, went under the water, that I was going to get snatched up.
Oh, spooky.
And then there was like another, if I didn't stay in the bath until it completely drained, then the grudge was going to come kill my entire family.
Okay.
So there were like little things like that. And even now to this day, like there are like little things that I'm like, if you don't do it this exact way, your family's going to die. Everybody loves going to die.
Yeah.
Like, why?
Yeah.
Not saying that I have OCD, but that is a symptom. But that's immediately what I thought of. But then they went into the actual explanation, the scientific explanation, and that makes a lot more sense than
No, it makes a lot of sense. Like, as a child, you're not allowed to express your emotions. You're trapped inside of a room, and you can't metaphorically break through the ceiling. And then when you finally do, you're allowed to express that anger, and you find someone who just needs a friend very similar to you. So yeah, I think that dream kind of unpacked a lot of things and continues to.
Yeah, no, that is very safe to say after reading the update and all the comments too. God, the brain is so interesting.
Yeah, how it chooses to like process and like cope or like not process at all and just make you live through that over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah.
In an attempt to process it. Wild.
That is wild. That's crazy.
Yeah, because like part of me is like anytime there's a dream story, I'm like, what's trying to get into your dreams? Is it something like
that's what I thought too
sinister?
When it was like, can I live with you? I'm like,
yeah, I was about to say absolutely the fuck not.
No. But you wouldn't know that as a kid. And that's another thing is that those types of sleep demons, they prey on kids.
They do, yeah.
Because they're so moldable. What's the word?
Very vulnerable.
Yeah, vulnerable.
When I was a kid, because
When I was a young warthog.
When I was a young warthog, I used to have lots of nightmares. And so every night before I went to sleep, to not have my nightmare, I would like close my eyes and imagine like a big catalog of all of the dreams. And then you like pick which dream you wanted, and you would open your little bag of Sandman sand, and you would take that and sprinkle it into the corner of your eyes to make sure that you have good dreams, and you have to put it back.
That's
and then
really
you go to sleep.
funny because I also, not a catalog, but I also had like a movie selection where it's like, which one would you like to have tonight?
Yeah.
But mine wasn't Sandman. I would do the like counting sheep.
Oh, cute.
Yeah, but it's always purple sheep and yellow stars.
Yeah.
I still count
it's
sheep.
a purple. It's a purple bag.
Oh, that's cute.
With yellow sand.
Oh yeah.
So-
Wow. Same.
So it's real.
Same. Oh.
We've gone to Slumberland.
Yeah, I still do that. Like whenever I'm trying to fall asleep and I really can't get my mind to settle down. This is great for people who need to settle your mind. I can't take my own advice because I didn't fall asleep till 3 or 4 in the morning.
Yeah.
So
I will say, me probably picking what I want to dream about is why I just like lay in bed now and just think about all these different scenarios, and why I have a terrible time with limerence, because like I need to make a movie in my head so I can fall asleep, but sometimes the movie's really good or a little bit too accurate. I'm like, and then what if they said this? And then I would say this, and then I don't sleep.
what's your weirdest dream not scary?
I had a dream one time that I was in high school, and my boyfriend at the time got turned into a fish by a wizard, and so I had to sail across the 7 seas to try to find him. There was a war. We rode in on hamsters. I also have another one. Is it the same one? I think it was the same one, where I was in the seas, 7 seas, trying to find him, and I was on the Titanic, and it sunk, obviously. And as we were sinking down, we were really worried about it, but the ocean was only like this deep, so we could stand in it. But then all these whales started coming towards us, and they were like gonna smash us. But as they were about to roll on top of me, I was like, wait, whales are made out of blubber, so I'm just gonna absorb into their body and then pop out on the other side and be totally fine.
Yeah.
So that's what
Sound
happened.
logic, yeah.
I don't know if I ever saved my fish boyfriend.
Your recollection for detail is astounding. So I give you props on that. I was gonna say my weirdest one is I lived in a tunnel. There are like highway tunnels in Dallas specifically that I'm thinking of. They're not going underneath anything. They're just tunnels.
Yeah.
And they have a bunch of lights in it. But I lived in one, and like the edges were closed off. But I had like Polly Pockets and like Legos and like Ken, like from Barbie and Ken was my boyfriend.
Yeah.
But I also
Solid boyfriend.
Barbie was also my girlfriend, and I was a kid, mind you. And the Yeti was there, but like the Yeti from Monsters Inc.
Okay.
Yeah, that's pretty much all I remember.
Yeah.
So that's my weirdest one. I have a lot of scary ones. But
I've had a
that's
lot of scary ones.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people being possessed.
I just am getting killed it a lot, or I get cheated on.
Lame.
Yeah, that's another really common one. It's like, why? I'm like,
I don't know.
blame whatever chemicals up there.
You think I want this? No.
Yeah, right? I don't want to wake up every morning hating you.
No.
No, just kidding, babe. I don't ever wake up hating you. It always just makes me sad.
Yeah. Yep, this is wild. But yeah, I think your brain processing things. But how wild would it be if it's like actually just a little something?
A little, not a demon, but some sort of little, like,
Something else.
parasitical ghost.
Yeah.
Is that how you say that word? Parasitical.
I finally saw Parasite.
I was going to say, you have, like, one gold hair, like, going on this side. I keep looking at it. It's so cute. But anyway.
I finally saw Parasite because I was scared to see it alone.
Yeah, that's
because
fair.
I've
Because of
heard it's like horrifying.
I've never seen it, so don't spoil it for me.
You could watch it alone. You will be fine.
Okay.
There's like one part where Lee's like, this is like the scariest shot I've ever seen in a movie. And it came up and like, I didn't know that was the part he was talking about. And I was like, haha. And then.
It just makes me think of the movie, The Boy. You know what I'm talking about? The one with the doll. His name was Brahm. And it was actually an old like a guy
on,
that
let me
lived on the wall.
Yeah. Yeah. And see, I didn't even know that much going into it, so I was along for the ride.
Yeah, I mean, it's so old, it's kind of been spoiled for me. I mean, I don't know exactly what happens, but I know that somebody is living in the house.
Yeah, that's
with
a part
them.
of it. Oh, I remember
that one.
this. Yep.
Prom! Mm-hmm. It's a dumb movie.
It is a dumb movie, isn't it? I was like, okay, well, did we watch this together?
No, I saw it a long time ago.
Maybe I saw it with my sister. I don't know. Weird little movie.
What if it's that as a dream? It's just somebody living in your walls.
No!
Can you give me permission to just come live with you wherever you go? And you're like, yeah, sure, why not? And it just follows you around and it reads you stories at night, which is why you don't have nightmares anymore.
Right.
But sometimes it's like, hey, don't forget that I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm still here.
I'm still on the lease, right? You're not going to kick me out?
I saw that fucking slub that you brought in last week. Who is that?
Girl, what? You're better. We've talked about this.
Stand up. Stand up for yourself. Stop letting him treat you like garbage.
Thought we were done with him. We already cried.
And then you brought in 2 others? Where'd they come from? At the same time?
Hey, yo!
This is why I chose you.
And
he did what? I wonder if she, like, plays little smut books for her so she can kind of experience that on the other side.
That is a good question. Does she need that? If
Dude.
you're, like, existing in the spirit world. Well, because there's, like...
If you're a ghost, do you still fuck?
There's, like, demons that will, like, have sex with people.
Yeah, but that's a demon. That's different.
But, like,
It's
I don't
not
know if a ghost
Yeah.
does.
Ghost, if you're listening,
Hey,
do you have
George.
sex? If you're, like, with your partner, you died, like, next to them, and you're both haunting the same place, do you guys get a little freaky ghost action going on? What would it be called?
According to the show Ghosts, which is
Ghost?
the answer for everything,
Yeah.
the ghost can get freaky.
Whoa!
Yeah.
Okay, well, now I gotta watch Ghost, because I'm learning
Honestly,
so much.
it's a good show to, it's, like, cute. You could turn off your brain a little bit.
Yeah.
You
that's
watch them
what
get
I
into
need
antics.
stuff like that, yeah.
You don't actually have to pay that much attention.
Except for when the ghosts are blinking.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Story 3. It feels like my flatmate is bringing back spirits from his job. Okay. So I'll start off by saying that before moving into this apartment, I'd never experienced anything paranormal, never had sleep paralysis, and never felt this crept out. I'm 21 and I share an apartment with this guy who's in his 40s and works as a nurse. So ever since moving into this place, I start experiencing very realistic dreams that blend into reality. My dreams always involve this apartment, and many times they also involve the energy of the guy I live with. I never see him in the dreams, but I can feel it. And this is in itself odd, as I used to dream about my hometown and places that are dear to my heart. The first dream happened in the room I sleep. In the dream, I was present in the moment, trying to sleep on my bed, and started hearing people walking around the house. At the start, I thought it was the guy, but soon I remembered he's abroad for the week, so it can't be him. I go under my covers to hide, and I start feeling something pulling my legs and my blanket. I'm getting dragged off the bed. I looked up to see 2 figures. One looked white and very flowy, almost like someone had a white sheet over their head, and the other was black and more slim. I sat up screaming as a result, and I woke up. When my eyes opened, I was looking in the exact location where I looked in my dream. The second situation, I'm not even sure if it was a dream or not. It was around midnight when I tried to fall asleep. I'm laying on my side in bed with most of my head covered. I start to feel like something was sitting on top of my legs at the end of the bed. Again, here I feel the energy of the guy that I live with, and I don't know why. While this is happening, I hear a whisper in my ear. I couldn't make out what it was. In this moment, I got angry and cursed in my home language, covered my head with my blankets, and fell asleep. Today, I went to sleep and had a crazy dream again. I was in the bathroom of this apartment, and one of my idols was there. I had some weird spray in my hand, similar to any cleaning product bottle, and I banished some type of entity that was sitting on the bathtub by spraying it. However, there was a second entity in the corner of the bathroom, but it went out of my vision. I decided I was going to spray this one. It went completely dark in the dream, and I was confused, not knowing where I was spraying at. I woke up to me making noises and having my armpit tickled. It was 4:30 a.m. I decided to try to go back to sleep, but I was too warm. At 5:40, I felt like my legs were slowly getting pulled again. It was subtle and slow. I realized and started kicking and then gave up on falling asleep. There are also other weird situations, but less intense. Overall, I feel uneasy here, but most of the time it's good until I have a dream or a situation like this. What could this be?
Dude, that's just two goofy ghosts.
I'm
I'm not gonna
pulling
lie.
pranks on you.
That sounds like two goofy ghosts that just... One of us is white, one of us is black.
So it's
You
us.
don't know which one's evil and which one's good.
Hate to
But,
break it to you, we are actually ghosts, and we do like to have a good haunt.
It's like the one of them is like, we have to figure out which one he thinks is scarier. Is it a dark void or like a classic like
Spooky.
yeah,
So it sounds like Dark Void for you.
Yeah,
I do like the dream of like spraying it.
Yeah, right.
Go away.
Like I do with a cat. Yeah. Stop. Hey.
Stop being spooky.
Stop tickling my armpits. I'm trying to sleep. No, that is just two goofy ghosts. I will say.
Ghosts. It sounds like ghosts and cats go
Ghosts
hand
and
in
cats,
hand.
they do.
Yep.
They do.
Because that's like living with my two cats.
If we're getting on a psychological level, this person might be seeing stuff.
Yeah, it might actually be.
If we're
I don't
talking
know.
about psyches, I mean, we have to go through that level, you know.
I wonder if there's any sort of like, how old is this place that you're living? Is there any mold?
Is there any mold?
Are you licking the walls? Did you have to sign a lead paint agreement when you...
Is there
addendum?
lead paint? Is actually a good.
Everywhere
good
that
point,
we
too.
live has lead paint addendums.
What are your pipes made out of?
Yeah. Or sleep paralysis,
Or
mayhaps.
it is a sleep paralysis demon that's trying to get you and pulling you out of bed. It's like, it sounds like they're living that Doja Cat music video. How my demons look. She's like running around being a creepy little demon.
I don't watch a lot of music videos.
A music video.
No,
I love a music video.
People hate me. I don't have the attention span for it.
I'm like, I listen to music while I'm doing something else. So if for me, I'm like,
I do them when I'm supposed to be doing something else. I'm like, I want to watch a music video.
I used to do that when I was younger, but I haven't in a long time. Maybe I should.
Or now. Whatever.
Story 4. So this is our special surprise story from our friend Katie.
Woohoo!
She took a nightmare that she had and she beautifully rewrote it to be an eloquent work of literature. So
Yay, Katie.
we're gonna get to get a first-hand look at this future author's work. Thanks, Katie. I hope I do you justice, by the way.
Yay!
I hope so, because I'm
Justice
probably
for
gonna...
Katie.
Justice for Katie. Free Katie. Coney 2012. Katie 2012.
We should make shirts.
It's the same style too, like the red and blue. Okay. Anyway, thank you for sharing. And without further ado,
I'm already stumbling. Without further ado, I'm nervous. Here we go. I'm gonna speed read. My friends and I unloaded the car in the small parking lot below our campsite, nestled on a narrow strip of mountain road. Calling it a campsite was an understatement, though. A better description was a glamp site. The glamorous camping site was located on the outer edge of a small resort that was popular for its natural hot spring bathhouse and bed and breakfast vibe. On weekends, there was a farmer's market with vendors selling a variety of items that are locally sourced from the mountain and valley below. My friend, Abigail, had heard of our glam site through the grapevine and planned our whole trip. No one else knew much about this place other than that it was difficult to get to. The drive along the mountainside was winding, and the utility road up to this parking area was barely big enough for our large SUV and had to drop off on one side. By the time we had gotten out of the car, we were a bit flushed from the stress of the ride, but it didn't stop there. All right, so it's a short half-mile hike up this path, and then we'll be at the campsite.
Abigail told the group, pointing towards a trail that went straight up into the forest. I like how they classify this as glamping, but you still have to hike straight uphill to get to it. It's not very glamorous, Freddie said. I knew he was trying to rile Abigail up because that was his favorite pastime. The hike was short, and Krista was the first one to the trailhead and began to lead our group. This was a horrible decision because she always sets the pace at breakneck speed. When Freddie and I commented on her near jog, she joked back, I only move this fast because I'm running away from my problems. If I sit long enough, I'll probably become the new weeping woman. We all laughed in between our heavy breathing. The rest of the hike was short but intense. Once we made it to the campsite, we were out of breath, but everyone glanced around excitedly. The space was incredible. The section we chose to glamp was an enclosed glass structure similar to a greenhouse. The floors were concrete, and there was a small kitchenette on the back wall. On the opposite side, we just came in, there were 2 glass doors. We knew from booking the site that we could open them manually, or we could turn on the automatic feature so they open on their own when it sends someone near, exactly like a store. This feature was really exciting for us because it made it seem like we could enjoy nature as easily as stepping out of a tent. I looked around the kitchen area and didn't see a welcome book, so I went through the drawers. I found a welcome brochure with a map and list of amenities at the resort. I also found a photo of 2 brothers who I assumed were previous guests. How fun! I thought about the possibility of our group taking a photo together and leaving it as our guest book entry. I checked out the map of the resort area, knowing that we were not connected to the rest of the resort and would have to walk about 15 minutes to get back to the front desk area. My friends and I were not concerned with the distance. We all thought that it would be best case scenario for glamping. We still had privacy and connection to nature, but we were only a short walk from a resort with luxury amenities. Dividing our glamping spot and the entrance to the resort was a thick, snow-covered forest filled with glittering pine trees. The mountain had just had a big snowdrop the day before, and everything was quiet and the snow was undisturbed. I felt truly at peace looking out into the distance. After settling in, everyone decided we shouldn't waste the day. It was still morning, and Abigail said there was an awesome frozen waterfall just on the other side of the mountain peak, and it shouldn't take too long. We'd be back by early afternoon. We didn't need any more convincing, so we set off. Gabe was leading the group, and he had the map in hand. He had a deep respect for nature and always forced us to slow down and enjoy the wonders around us. He was the perfect person to lead us on the hike because the forest was a cathedral of nature. The late morning sun made the snow look magical, and I could only hear the crunch of our footsteps in the snow and the occasional rustle of an animal running around out of sight. As we continued the hike, the incline got steeper and steeper. By the time we reached the summit, the beauty had dissipated. The trees were thinning out and needleless. I couldn't hear any animals scurrying throughout the forest either. I assumed it was because the less inhabitable elevation caused that change, but I couldn't be too sure. We were practically skipping down the other side of the summit, excitement buzzing around us as we got closer to the frozen waterfall. I figured that at any moment we'd turn around a bend and see the waterfall, but not that moment or the moment after that. I finally checked my watch and realized we must have gone off course because we would have been there by now. I hollered to the front of the group, and Gabe admitted that he got turned around. We all looked at the map and were able to figure out where we took the wrong turn. As we headed back to the main trail, I noticed the clouds began to darken and snow started to lightly fall. It was mid-afternoon at this point, and I realized that we were likely going to have to finish out the hike as it got dark and as it snowed. Krista said this out loud to our group, and we all dug into our packs to pull out the appropriate gear. When I went to sling my backpack on, I turned to face Abigail to make sure she was settled before continuing on. She wasn't digging in her pack, though. She was standing perfectly still, and her face had gone pale. "We're going to be walking when the sun goes down?" she asked, eyes wide. We all circled around her, concern showing on our faces. She rattled out, "We need to hurry. We can't be out here late." Gabe stepped closer to her. "What do you mean we can't be out here late? Are there cougars or something?" She shook her head, still not moving, still pale. "Will someone please explain what the fuck is going on?" Freddie asked. That shook Abigail out of whatever haze she was in. "We need to get moving," she said, pushing past all of us in a hurry. "I'll explain on the way, but we need to walk fast." No one asked questions. We caught up to her and grouped around her, putting her in the middle so we could all hear the explanation as we hiked. These woods are perfectly safe during the day, but once the sun begins to set, it becomes more dangerous. I didn't think anything of this. We all hiked mountain peaks at high elevation, and the same is true for those. Don't be on the summit after 1. But this peak wasn't that high, so her concern didn't seem necessary. I was about to interrupt her with my thoughts, but she continued on. At first, it seems normal. The winds pick up, the snow starts to fall harder, but then she paused. Changes. I lifted my eyebrow, confusion and worry filled me, but she kept talking, not realizing my turmoil. The wind feels like hands pushing and pulling you in different directions. The snow isn't falling, but hitting you in the face, almost like it's trying to disorient you, and it gets worse the closer you get to the summit. I saw Krista shiver, not from the cold, although there had definitely been a drop in temperature the closer they got to the summit. The snowfall was heavier too, and an occasional wind gust would blow the snow sideways. If you believe the stories, this wasn't a natural storm, but it seemed pretty normal to me. I saw Gabe raise his brow and say what he was thinking. How is that any different from a bad snowstorm on a mountain peak in the dead of winter? That doesn't sound like anything to be terrified of. We'll just need to be really careful. He chuckled, mostly to himself. Abigail slowed her pace a little bit. The forest is known to essentially be a Venus flytrap. It's beautiful and looks idyllic, but once you're in its domain, it wants you to get lost. Anyone that has gone off the trail in the storm has never found their way back out again. People have tried to camp out in the forest, but most don't make it back. No one really knows what happens, and when the rangers find the campsites, it doesn't look disturbed. It always looks like those people just left the tent willingly. There's never any signs of struggle. There's also never any bodies to be found. What the Are you insane? Did you bring us to a haunted forest? All of our friends shouted at once. I was frozen in fear. I didn't want to believe her, but the energy in the forest had shifted as the afternoon waned. This whole trip began to make sense. She was into the paranormal world and had always dreamed of going to one of the creepy places that she'd read about. I just didn't think she would rope all of us into it. I had no doubt she was telling the truth about this place. Her panicked expression hasn't left her face since she found out how late the day had gotten. I finally found my ability to speak, but it was a soft, "We should keep going." No one said anything as we turned and started heading back to the trail towards the summit. All of our heads were down, listening to the forest, bracing the weather as it began to turn worse as we approached the late afternoon. "Stop!" Freddie yells. We look around, turning to find anything dangerous. At once, all of our gazes landed straight ahead on the trail. The hair on my arms stood straight up. I could see blizzard-like conditions not even 20 yards ahead of us. The wind was whipping the snow so hard I couldn't see anything past 5 yards. It was almost like there was an invisible wall separating where we were, where the wind was relatively calm and the snowfall was still gentle, and where the start of the steep incline to the summit began. The trees closest to us were barely moving in the wind, but on the other side of the barrier, I could see the pine needles holding onto branches for dear life as the entire tops of trees looked like they were being yanked back and forth. "We have to be prepared for anything in there. Abigail, do you know anything else about what it's like in there?" Gabe asked. Abigail shook her head. She looked terrified. She should have been. She was the one that got us all into this mess. Does everyone remember the protocol for whiteout conditions? Gabe began to pull out a rope out of his bag. We all mumbled, yes. We had started hiking in the winter a year ago and had each taken classes on emergency situations. I never thought we'd need that information though. We all quickly unloaded our packs and put on our goggles, gloves, and wind-resistant liners. We pulled on our gaiters to protect our necks and mouths. Our speech was now limited to gruff mumbles, but no one was talking. Either we were all too scared to say anything, or we were trying to focus on what was to come. I was both. My breath was shaky as I pulled my gloves and put my goggles into place. Gabe lengthened out our rope and passed it down. Each person stuck it through their belt loop. If someone fell and got hurt or tried to go off trail, everyone would feel it and could assist. Gabe looked at us, eyes serious. Grab the person in front of you too. Always hold on to their shoulder and be sure you're always checking to make sure the person behind you is still holding on to you. He looked at Abigail. You know the trail, don't you? I'm sure since you're so obsessed with this place, you know it like the back of your hand. Abigail nodded her head slightly. Good. Then you can lead us. Don't fuck up and get us killed. It was your stupid-ass idea to get us into this mess. Now you can get us out. Abigail went to stand in the front. I was holding the rear of the group. I grabbed onto Freddie's shoulder with my right hand. He was shaking. I gave his shoulder a squeeze of encouragement and we started to walk in a linked single-file line. We've got this, I thought to myself. It's just a whiteout condition on a normal hike, nothing supernatural about it. As soon as we crossed the invisible barrier, I realized I was wrong. We were hiking straight up, and the wind felt like it was actually trying to push us off the trail. At moments, I swear I felt hands grab my shoulders and shove me with all of their might. I didn't know if it was happening to anyone else, and I couldn't ask because all I could hear was the wind tearing through the trees so fast it sounded like screams. At one point, the screams sounded so real, I felt my heart rate speed up. Oh God, what if someone else went for a nice afternoon hike and is stuck up here? What if someone needs help? My thoughts were panicked and my breaths were heavy. We made it to the summit and we were going down the other side, our steps quicker now, anticipating the end of these conditions. But the wind wouldn't stop grabbing at me. I heard another scream on the wind, but this time it was coming from behind me. I whirled around, expecting to see someone. I do see something. There's a shadow just on the edge of the trail, right where I heard the scream come from. They must need help. A gust of wind pushed me from behind, and I got an overwhelming feeling that I couldn't identify, but there was no time to dissect it. I had to go help this person. I started to try and walk towards them, but felt a tug on my belt. I looked down and noticed a rope tied to me. I stared at it, confused. Where did this come from? I thought. I tried to untie the rope. It was keeping me from helping someone. I had to get untied. My shoulder started to shake, and someone entered my line of sight. It was my friend, Freddie. I hadn't seen him in months, though. What was he doing here? I was confused. I thought I was alone. I could feel my confusion leave my thoughts just as quickly as it came, and determination took over again. Freddie didn't matter because I still had to go help this person that was stuck in the storm. Freddie was still holding onto one of my shoulders and pulled his gaiter down to expose his mouth. He was trying to tell me something. It took me a moment to realize he was saying, "It's not real. Keep moving." It's not real? What's not real? I gasped, awareness shooting back into my body. It's not real. I felt my panicked desire to help the stranger disappear. It felt like an enchantment was lifted and I could see clearly. Freddie noticed that I had come to my senses and walked back around to our group in line. I took one last glance at the spot off the trail and didn't see anything. As I began to turn back towards my friends, I felt a set of hands on my shoulders. At first, I thought it was Freddie again, but the energy coming off this set of hands was wrong, like its entire presence was evil. The hands shoved me towards the forest off the trail. I stumbled but caught myself quickly and turned back towards the culprit and saw no one. It was just another wind gust. No, not just a gust of wind. Now that I wasn't in its thrall, I understood what the feeling from earlier was. Death. Death was coasting on these winds, puppeting the gusts like its own deadly doll. I feel nauseous, understanding how close I was to welcoming death's embrace. I looked forward and noticed friends waiting for me. Abigail is at the front, facing forward and shooting her left and right, like she's following the sound of two people talking. She noticed me looking and she pointed down towards something. I squinted and I could barely make out another invisible barrier. We had made it. I put my hand back on the shoulder of Freddie and we started walking once again. I kept my head down and kept chanting in my head, "It's not real, your friends are here," over and over again until I could hear something else besides screams. It was someone coughing. I looked up and saw that we had made it to the other side of the invisible barrier. The wind wasn't as loud up there, still blowing strong gusts, but I no longer felt hands touching me. We all looked over at each other, now able to breathe a bit easier, and I could hear Krista laugh. Our relief was palpable. We had made it. I untied the rope from the belt loop and passed it to Freddie. We could still faintly hear the screams on the other side of the barrier, but they sounded muffled. We kept all of our winter gear on, since it was still snowing like crazy. We continued to hike down the other side of the mountain towards the resort. The further down we got, the more gentle the wind became and the softer the snow fell. It was almost peaceful again. I let out a deep sigh of relief, happy that the wind had died down enough for me to hear the things around me. I heard the wind travel through the trees. I expected to hear a normal rustle of leaves and movement of branches, but instead, I heard a whisper. The next breeze that floated by, I heard a soft voice gently say, "Please, please come back. You have to help me. Please." Everyone in our party froze, shoulders tensing. "Did anyone else hear that?" Freddie asked quietly. I could see Abigail, Gabe, and Krista clearly shaking their heads yes. Then, a scream coming from the summit rattled through the trees. It sounded like a scream of desperation and anger. We had angered whatever was on that mountain. I don't want to stick around and find out. Freddie and I braced ourselves to run, but Abigail spun around harshly and yelled, "Don't run!" We were frozen in our stance, debating what to do. She turned and started walking quickly. She was laser focused on the trail, not taking her eyes off of it for a second. We all followed closely behind, mimicking her and staring at the person ahead of us. We could still hear a woman's soft whisper in the wind, begging us to go back. One breeze, I could hear her on the wind above me. Then on the next breeze, it sounded like she was right next to me, just off the trail. Her voice was angelic and hypnotizing, and I had to catch myself before I turned to look off to the side, trying to find her. We didn't walk much further before Abigail stopped and said that we were right in front of the resort. I finally looked away from the back of Freddie's head and looked around. We were at the water fountain in front of the resort. I couldn't see anything else, though. No resort, no lights, no nothing. Even though the snow had stopped falling and the wind had died down, I still couldn't see more than 10 yards in front of me. A thick fog had rolled in, limiting our line of sight. I checked my watch. It was only 5, and the sun wouldn't set for another 30 minutes. Just to be safe, I turned on my headlamp, hoping it would cut through the thick fog. It didn't. A sharp breeze blew through our stopping point. "Help me!" it screamed. We all jumped and looked at Abigail, silently begging her to continue leading us to our campsite. At this point, everyone was borderline jogging, but careful not to make too much of a sound. I could hear the wind start to blow faster and feel the gusts go stronger. Some gusts would carry screams, and the breezes would carry soft cries. I heard a familiar whoosh and noticed the automatic doors to our glamping site. I almost cried out of relief. Krista actually did, after setting her bag down inside and falling into a heap of tears next to it. The automatic doors closed, and for the first time in hours, it was silent. I sank down next to Krista, and the weight of the day weighing me down. A storm began to brew outside. It seemed like we had made it just in time for the snow to start falling hard, and the wind was commanding it. A strong gust of wind blew through, another scream riding alongside it, and the automatic doors opened on their own. The screaming continued even though the wind had stopped. We all scrambled in different directions. Krista and I began sitting on the floor, so we scooted back as fast as we could until we hit the far wall. Abigail and Gabe were over by the kitchenette. I whipped my head around, trying to find Freddie. He was right by the door. I felt my heart lurch in my chest. I saw him trying to push the doors closed, but an invisible force was pushing them back open. I saw Abigail leave her safe haven and run over to the other door to help Freddie. "Where are the keys?" I yelled. I saw a glimmer in the air as Gabe tossed the keys to me. Abigail and Freddie just got the door closed, and I ran between them, quickly locking it. I could hear the wind all the way to the other side, brutally pounding against the glass, like 2 fists beating on it. We all backed away. Hours passed. It was late, and we were still exhausted but too tired to fall asleep. We assumed our sleep positions for the night, huddled together for our protection and warmth. We were too worried about lighting a fire because we didn't want to bring attention to ourselves. The wind only kept getting stronger and more brutal, and right alongside the wind, the woman's voice became clearer and louder. Her screams of desperation turned into screeches of anger. I awoke the next morning. I must have accidentally fallen asleep at some point. The sun was shining and the birds outside were chirping. I looked around and everyone else was still asleep. I decided to get up and bravely looked outside into the forest. Just yesterday, I thought it was so beautiful, and today I shiver in fear. I saw something out of the corner of my eye. There was something moving in the forest. Was it the woman from last night coming to steal us away in the daylight? When the person cut through, I saw it was just an older gentleman carrying a bag of produce. I stepped outside to ask him if he's okay, and that's when I heard a bunch of muttered voices. I walked more into the forest, closer to the resort, and saw people milling around stalls, shopping at the farmer's market. People were laughing and chatting. Children were playing in the water fountain that we stood at last night and heard that awful scream. A chill ran through me as memories flooded my brain. I looked towards the trail from the resort and met up with the trail that we had taken yesterday. There was a big yellow and red sign at the start of the trail. I stepped closer to read what it said. "Warning, hike at your own risk," and "Stay on trails, do not venture off." And underneath these signs were dozens of crosses that people had hung on a rusty nail for protection. I glanced ahead into the forest and could have sworn something was staring right back. I rushed back to my friends who were now awake and packing their things. I was relieved they didn't want to stay another night. Everyone was out the door in record time, and I was doing the final sweep of the space. I checked a drawer and saw some photos of the two brothers. I decided to check the back of the photo and see if there was a name or date. There was. In black ink, it read, Michael and Jared were here, 8/10/2012. Under that, in thick red letters, it said, The mountain took Jared. Beware of the summit. Chills raked over my body, and I put the photo back in the drawer. We were lucky we didn't fall victim to the legend of this mountain. I met my friends outside the camping spot, and we started the short trek down the mountain. A soft breeze, warmed by the sun, drifted over us. It would have been peaceful if there hadn't been a soft voice that followed and said, Don't go. Please come back. I had never been so happy to get to my car.
Okay. This wasn't a dream. This was a dream.
I think it was a dream. Correct me
Okay.
if I'm wrong, Katie. I'm pretty sure this was like a dream that she had, that she...
Gotcha. Because I was about to say,
Rewrote.
what mountain are you in, Katie?
Oh, no.
Like,
I'm pretty sure it was a
the
dream.
Appalachian?
It sounds like the Mount Fuji in...
It does.
Yeah,
Yep.
in Japan. That's exactly what I was thinking.
Like, where are
It
you
sounds
hiking so I can make sure to never go there?
No, it sounds like a horror movie. That was so
It
well written.
does.
I would absolutely watch a horror movie if you directed it, because that sounds fantastic. Also
Write it,
sounds
direct it, star in it.
terrifying.
Yeah.
The recollection of detail. Once again, both of you, recollection of detail. Incredible. Impeccable.
Can't remember a lot, but I know my dreams.
That's so impressive. That's so impressive, and it's impressive that you could write this beautiful story.
Yeah,
off
super
of
well
that.
written.
So, thank you for writing that. That was so spooky, and I'm definitely gonna have to take a sleeping pill to go to
wild.
bed.
Yeah, that's wild. I hate that for you. I hope you never have that dream again. I hope you only have nice dreams.
You like deserve nice dreams.
You dream little dreams of us. How nice for you. Well, I will say, I don't think we did a very good job at psychoanalyzing those dreams. In fact, I might have just added to my nightmare bank. Thank you, Katie.
I agree. And again, for only getting 3 hours of sleep, I'm not particularly excited to go to sleep anymore.
That is the opposite of what we wanted from this episode. Is there anything I can do to help?
Actually, now that I think of it, you can like, follow, subscribe.
Stream us anywhere that you listen to your podcasts. You know, the Spotify, Amazon, Apple,
YouTube. We also have Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Reddit. All of that is what was that _ the pod. Mm-hmm. If you would like to share your own story with us, you can email us at whatwasthat.thepod@gmail.com.
Yep. Keep liking and sharing because we are at, is it 57 or 56?
56 on
We're
YouTube.
at 56 followers on YouTube, so that's
Yeah.
pretty cool. So thanks for that. But yeah, like, share with your friends, do all that because one like is one less nightmare that we have to endure at the end of the night. And wouldn't that be nice for us?
Yeah, you don't want to give us nightmares. But before we go, we'd like to give one more big shout out to Katie for your amazing story. So thank you for sharing to our library of horrors.
And one day you'll be a famous author, and we can use this clip to prove that we were OG fans of the phenomenal author Katie.
Yeah. And Sarah, if you're listening to this while sleeping, I hope you dream a little dream of... Wait, what was that?